The stars looked different out here. Hyunwoo stood at the observation window of the human colony ship and watched the yellow sun of the Tau 9 system grow larger. Behind him, the rest of his team prepared for their landing. They were far from Earth now, farther than any human had gone before. "Lieutenant, we're getting another message from the surface," Ji-hai called out. She was the medical officer, a woman with sharp eyes and steady hands. "The Velkari want to meet us as soon as we land." Hyunwoo nodded. The Velkari were a reptilian species that controlled this sector of space. They were tall, covered in green scales, and had eyes that never seemed to blink. The Galactic Council had sent humanity here to negotiate mining rights for Tau 9. It was a test, everyone knew. The galaxy wanted to see if humans could play nice with others. "Tell them we'll be ready," Hyunwoo said. He turned to look at his team. There was Ji-hai at the communications console. Taeyang sat near the engine controls, his fingers dancing over the screens. He was their engineer, the one who kept everything running. And Dawn was in the corner reading reports about Tau 9's ecosystem. She was their xenobiologist, an expert on alien life forms. They were a small team, just 4 people, but they were Earth's best. The landing went smoothly. The Resilience touched down on a flat plain near the Velkari settlement. The air outside was breathable, which was lucky. The temperature was warm, almost hot. Hyunwoo stepped out first, followed by his team. A group of Velkari waited for them. At the front stood Veshrak, their ambassador. He was nearly 3 meters tall, his scales a deep emerald color. When he spoke, his voice came through a translator device on his chest. "Welcome, humans," Veshrak said. His mouth didn't match the words. "It was strange to watch. We hope your journey was pleasant." "It was long, but we're happy to be here," Hyunwoo replied. He extended his hand, a human gesture of greeting. Veshrak looked at it for a moment, then touched Hyunwoo's hand with his clawed fingers. The scales felt cool and smooth. The negotiations began the next day. They met in a large dome structure that the Velkari had built. Inside it was cool and dim. The Velkari preferred less light than humans did. Hyunwoo found himself squinting to read his data pad. Veshrak talked about mining quotas and territory divisions. Hyunwoo listened carefully and made counteroffers. It was boring work, but important. Taeyang dozed off twice and Jihi had to elbow him awake, but Daeun noticed something. She watched how the other Velkari acted around Veshrak. They seemed nervous. They kept glancing at a door at the back of the dome. Something was going on, something the Velkari weren't saying. On the 3rd day, Veshrak made an unusual request. "I would like to see your living quarters," he said, "to understand human needs better." Hyunwoo thought it was odd, but he wanted to build trust. "Of course," he said. "You're welcome to visit." That evening, Veshrak came to the human hab module. It was attached to the Resilience, a series of connected rooms where the team lived. Hyunwoo showed him around. The kitchen area, the sleeping quarters, the small recreation room. Veshrak asked many questions. How did humans sleep? What temperature did they prefer? Did they lock their doors at night? "We usually don't lock the internal doors," Hyunwoo explained. "We trust each other." Something flickered in Veshrak's eyes, but Hyunwoo couldn't read the expression. After Veshrak left, Da-eun pulled Hyunwoo aside. "Something's wrong," she said. "Did you see how he was looking at everything? He was planning something." "Planning what?" Hyunwoo asked. "I don't know. But I don't trust him." Hyunwoo wanted to dismiss her concerns, but Da-eun was rarely wrong about these things. "Keep your eyes open," he told his team. "If anything seems strange, wake me immediately." That night, Hyunwoo couldn't sleep. He lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. Through the thin walls, he could hear Taeyang snoring. Outside, the wind of Tau 9 whispered against the hull. What Hyunwoo didn't know was that Veshrak had returned. The Velkari ambassador moved silently through the darkness outside the hab module. He carried a containment unit, roughly the size of a large suitcase. Inside, something scratched and growled. Veshrak had planned this for weeks. The Galactic Council feared humans. They were newcomers to space, a species that had climbed to the top of their world's food chain through violence and cunning. Every species in the galaxy knew the stories. Humans came from a death world. They were predators who ate meat. They had conquered their own planet before reaching for the stars. The other species were afraid. What if humans decided to conquer them too? So Veshrak had devised a test. Inside the containment unit was a Raxacor cub, a juvenile of the most dangerous species the Velkari had ever created. Raxacors were war beasts bred for combat, raised in violence. Even as babies they were deadly. The plan was simple. Release the cub into the human living area. When the humans encountered it, they would react with their true nature. They would kill it, probably with great violence. And Veshrak would have proof. Proof that humans were the dangerous predators everyone feared. Proof that they didn't belong in civilized space. Veshrak found an access panel to the HAB module's ventilation system. His claws made short work of the lock. He opened the containment unit carefully. Inside, the Raxacor cub hissed at him, its amber eyes glowing in the darkness. Go, Veshrak whispered in his own language. Show them what you are. Show them what they are. He guided the cub into the ventilation shaft. It scrambled away, its claws scraping against metal. Veshrak closed the panel and disappeared into the night. Inside the ventilation system, the Raxacor cub moved through the darkness. It was confused and frightened. The Velkari had taken it from its mother only days ago. Since then, it had known only cages and pain. The handlers had been cruel, teaching it that everything was an enemy. The cub was hungry. It was scared. And it had been taught that when you were scared, you attacked. It crawled through the ductwork, following the scent of warm-blooded creatures. Its instincts screamed danger, but also opportunity. Food, maybe safety, maybe something to make the fear go away. The cub reached a grate and peered through. Below was a dark room with sleeping humans. It could smell them, hear their breathing. Its training told it to attack. But something else, something deeper in its young mind made it hesitate. The cub had never known kindness. It had never known gentleness. Everything in its short life had been pain and fear. It didn't know that was about to change. The cub's claw scraped against the metal grate. The sound was small, but in the quiet of the night it was enough. In his bunk, Hyunwoo's eyes opened. He lay still, listening. There it was again. A scratching sound coming from above. Something was in the ventilation system. Hyunwoo sat up slowly, reaching for his communicator. Team, he whispered into the device. Wake up. We have a visitor. Across the HAB module, lights began to turn on. The team assembled in the common area, pulling on clothes and grabbing their standard-issue plasma pistols. They were trained soldiers despite being diplomats. Earth had made sure of that. The scratching grew louder. Something was moving through the ducts, getting closer. They could hear breathing now, heavy and deep. Whatever it was big. Taeyang aimed his pistol at the ceiling vent. What do you think it is? I don't know, Hyunwoo said. But stay ready. The vent cover rattled. Something was pushing against it from the inside. Dayun's scientific mind was racing. If it's native wildlife, it shouldn't be able to access our ventilation. Those systems are sealed. Someone put something in there. Veshrak, Jihai said quietly. He was asking about our quarters. About locks, Hyunwoo's jaw tightened. If the Velkari had done this deliberately, it was an act of war. But right now that didn't matter. Right now they had to survive. The vent cover burst open. Something large and dark dropped into the room. It landed on all fours, scales gleaming in the light. The creature was smaller than an adult human, but its presence filled the space. 3 rows of crystalline teeth, claws like daggers, eyes that burned with amber fire. A Raxacor cub had come to kill them. The creature stood in the center of the common area, its body low to the ground. Its scales were black as midnight, catching the light in strange ways. The Raxacor cub was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Hyunwoo had seen pictures of these creatures in the diplomatic briefings, but seeing one in person was different. It was bigger than he'd expected for a juvenile. Its head came up to his waist. The teeth gleamed like glass, each one as long as his finger. The claws scored marks in the floor plating as the creature shifted its weight. Nobody move, Hyunwoo said quietly. His plasma pistol was pointed at the creature, but his finger wasn't on the trigger. Not yet, the Raxacor cub growled. It was a deep sound that came from its chest, a sound that made the air vibrate. The creature's eyes swept across the 4 humans, calculating. Its tail lashed back and forth behind it. Taeyang's hands were shaking. We need to shoot it, he whispered. Before it attacks. Wait, Daeun said. She was staring at the creature with intense focus. Her weapon was lowered slightly. Look at its posture. What about it? Jihai asked. Her medical training had included some xenobiology, but not enough for this. Its ears, Daeun said. They're flat against its head. And look at the tail. It's tucked low, not raised. This isn't attack posture. Then what is it? Hyunwoo kept his eyes on the creature. Fear, Doan said simply. It's terrified. The Raxacor cub took a step forward and growled again. But now that Daun had pointed it out, Hyunwoo could see it. The creature was shaking slightly. Its movements were jerky, uncertain. The growling sounded more desperate than threatening. It's a baby, Jihai realized. Look how young it is. The scales haven't fully hardened yet. You can see the softer tissue between them. The creature hissed at them, showing all those terrible teeth. But it didn't charge. It just stood there, trapped in the room with 4 aliens it had never seen before. Dayun slowly holstered her weapon. Don't shoot it. Are you crazy? Taeyang's voice went up an octave. That thing could tear us apart. It could, Dayun agreed. But it won't. Look at it. Really look. Hyunwoo lowered his weapon slightly. He'd learned to trust Dayun's judgment about living things. She had a gift for reading behavior, for understanding what creatures were thinking. If she said the Raxacor was scared, he believed her. The creature's eyes were locked on them. They glowed in the dim light, amber mixed with flecks of gold. There was intelligence there, Hyunwoo realized. This wasn't just an animal. This was a thinking being, young and afraid. Veshrak did this, Jihi said. Her anger was clear in her voice. He put a child in our ventilation system. A child designed to kill, Taeyang pointed out. Still a child, Jihai replied. Daun took a step forward. The Raxacor cub immediately backed up, its growl intensifying. But it didn't attack. It just moved away, keeping distance between them. Easy, Daun said softly. Nobody's going to hurt you. The creature couldn't understand her words, but maybe it could understand the tone. Dayun had a gentle voice, the kind you'd use with a frightened pet. She took another slow step forward. The cub's tail swept back and forth. Its claws scraped the floor. But it didn't charge. Hyunwoo made a decision. He holstered his plasma pistol completely. Everyone, weapons down, sir? Taeyang looked at him like he'd lost his mind. That's an order, if Daun's right. Pointing weapons at it just makes it more scared. And scared animals are dangerous. Reluctantly, Taeyang and Jihi lowered their weapons. The change in the room was immediate. The Raxacor cub's growling quieted slightly. Its ears, which had been pressed flat against its skull, lifted just a little. Good, Dayun whispered. She was now only a few meters from the creature. You're just scared, aren't you? Someone took you from your mother. Someone hurt you. And now you're in a strange place with strange people. The cub watched her with those glowing eyes. It took a step back, then stopped. Something in Daun's voice seemed to reach it. Jihai slowly knelt down, making herself smaller, less threatening. We had dogs on Earth, she said quietly. Thousands of years ago, they were wolves. Predators like this. But we learned to live together. We learned to trust each other. This isn't a dog, Taeyang said, but he was watching with fascination now instead of fear. No, Jihai agreed, but the principle is the same. Fear and aggression are learned behaviors. Kindness can be learned too. Hyunwoo remembered something from the diplomatic briefings. The Velkari raised their Raxacors in combat pits. They fed them live prey from birth. They beat them when they showed weakness. The Raxacors weren't naturally vicious. They were made that way. This cub was young enough that maybe, just maybe, it hadn't been completely broken yet. It must be hungry, Hyunwoo said. He moved slowly to the kitchen area, keeping his movements smooth and predictable. The Raxacor watched him but didn't growl. He opened a storage compartment and pulled out a ration pack. Military-grade protein bars dense with nutrients. He tore open the package and held it up so the creature could see it. Food, he said. Are you hungry? The Raxacor's nostrils flared. It could smell the protein. Its eyes fixed on the ration bar with sudden intensity. Hyunwoo tossed the bar gently toward the creature. It landed on the floor about a meter away. The cub looked at it, then at Hyunwoo, then back at the food. Suspicious, uncertain. It's okay, Daun encouraged. It's safe. Nobody's going to hurt you. The Raxacor took a cautious step forward. Its nose touched the ration bar, sniffing carefully. Then, in one quick motion, it snatched up the food and retreated to the corner. The bar disappeared into that mouth of crystalline teeth. The cub chewed quickly, swallowing fast. When it finished, it looked up at them. The aggressive posture was gone. It just looked like what it was, a hungry, scared baby. More? Hyunwoo asked. He pulled out another ration bar. This time, when he tossed it, the Raxacor didn't retreat after eating. It stayed where it was, watching them. Waiting. Jihai rose slowly from her kneeling position. She moved with careful deliberation toward the kitchen area and got a bowl. She filled it with water from the dispenser and placed it on the floor, then backed away. The creature approached the water cautiously. Its tongue, long and forked, dipped into the bowl. It drank deeply, and some of the tension left its body. When was the last time someone gave you water? Daeyun wondered aloud. When was the last time someone gave you anything without hurting you first? The Raxacor finished drinking and sat down. The aggressive display was completely gone now. It just looked tired. Its glowing eyes were half closed. Daeyun took another step closer. "Can I?" she asked, more to her teammates than the creature. "Be careful," Hyunwoo said. Daeyun extended her hand slowly, palm down, fingers relaxed. It was the way you approached a strange dog on Earth, letting them smell you first. The Raxacor watched her hand approach. Its nostrils flared again, taking in her scent. Then the cub did something that shocked all of them. It leaned forward and pressed its scaled head against Daeyun's palm. The contact lasted only a moment before the creature pulled back, uncertain again. But it had happened. The touch had been gentle, almost seeking comfort. "Oh," Daeyun breathed. "Oh, you poor thing." She moved her hand again, slower this time. The Raxacor allowed the touch. Daeyun's fingers found a spot behind the creature's ear ridge, and she scratched gently. The effect was immediate. The cub's eyes closed. A new sound came from its throat, not a growl, but something softer, almost like a purr. "I don't believe it," Taeyang said. Jihai sat down on the floor, making herself even less threatening. "Come here," she called softly. "Come on." The Raxacor looked at her, then at Daeun, then back at Jihai. It took a tentative step forward. Then another. It crossed the space between them and sniffed at Jihai's outstretched hand. Jihai touched the creature's snout gently. "You're just a baby," she said. "And someone tried to turn you into a weapon. But you don't have to be that. You can choose something different." The cub's tail began to move in a different way, not the aggressive lashing from before. This was slower, more rhythmic, almost like a dog wagging its tail. Over the next hour, the four humans slowly gained the Raxacor's trust. Hyunwoo fed it 3 more ration bars. Taeyang found an old towel and offered it to the creature, which curled up on it immediately. The cub was exhausted, they realized. It had probably been awake and afraid for days. Daeun continued to pet it gently, and the creature leaned into the touch like it was starving for affection. Maybe it was. As the Tau 9 sun began to rise outside, casting orange light through the windows, the Raxacor cub finally fell asleep. It was curled up in the middle of the common area, its head resting on Hyunwoo's lap while he sat on the floor. The ultimate killing machine snored softly, dreaming whatever dreams young creatures dream. "Beshrak is going to be very surprised," Jihai said with a slight smile. "Good," Hyunwoo replied. He looked down at the sleeping creature. "This was supposed to prove we're monsters. Instead, I think we're about to prove something very different." Taeyang was already making notes on his data pad. "What do we call it?" "We can't just keep saying the creature, Marbori," Daeun said immediately. "It means hail or light snow in Korean. Small and looks fierce, but ultimately harmless." The Raxacor cub, now named Bori, continued to sleep peacefully in Hyunwoo's lap, completely unaware that it had just changed the course of galactic history. Morning came to Tau 9 with golden light. Hyunwoo had fallen asleep sitting against the wall with Bori still in his lap. His neck was stiff and his legs had gone numb, but he didn't want to move and wake the creature. The Raxacor cub was sleeping so peacefully, its chest rising and falling with each breath. Jihai had stayed up all night, watching. She'd taken biological readings with her medical scanner, being careful not to disturb Bori. The data was fascinating. The cub's stress hormones had dropped dramatically after the humans fed it. Its heart rate had slowed from the rapid beating of fear to something calm and steady. "It trusts us," Jihai said quietly. "After just a few hours, it trusts us completely." Daeun was awake too, sitting nearby with her own scanner. "I've been reading about Raxacor development. This one is maybe 3 months old. Still young enough to form new bonds. If the Velkari had waited another few months, the conditioning would have been permanent." "They sent a baby to attack us," Taeyang said. He'd woken up angry, and the anger hadn't faded. "What kind of species does that?" "One that's afraid," Hyunwoo said. His voice was rough from sleep. "Fear makes people do terrible things. We've seen it in our own history." Bori stirred in his lap, making a small sound. The cub's eyes opened, those amber orbs focusing on Hyunwoo's face. For a moment the creature seemed confused, like it couldn't remember where it was. Then it saw the humans around it and recognition dawned. Bori stretched, its claws extending and retracting. It yawned, showing all those crystalline teeth. Then it pushed its head against Hyunwoo's hand, clearly wanting attention. "Good morning to you too," Hyunwoo said, scratching behind Bori's ear ridge. The purring sound started immediately. Breakfast was an interesting affair. Bori ate 4 more ration bars and drank an entire bowl of water. The cub followed Dayun around the HAB module like a shadow, curious about everything. When Taiyang started his morning maintenance checks, Bori watched with fascination as the engineer worked with tools and screens. "It's intelligent," Dayun observed. "Watch how it studies what we're doing. This isn't just animal instinct. There's real thinking happening." Hyunwoo checked his communicator. There were 17 messages from Veshrak, each one asking to resume negotiations. The Velkari ambassador wanted to meet as soon as possible. Hyunwoo smiled grimly. He could imagine Veshrak's impatience. The ambassador would be expecting to find human bodies this morning. "Should we tell him about Bori?" Jihai asked. "No," Hyunwoo decided. "Let him come see for himself." They agreed to meet at noon. Veshrak arrived exactly on time, accompanied by 2 other Velkari. The reptilian beings stood outside the HAB module, and Hyunwoo could see tension in their postures. Veshrak's tail was rigid, his claws flexing nervously. "Lieutenant," Veshrak said through his translator, "we have much to discuss today. May we come inside?" "Of course," Hyunwoo replied. He stepped aside, gesturing for them to enter. The 3 Velkari entered the common area, and Veshrak's eyes immediately swept the room. He was looking for something. Blood, probably, bodies, evidence of violence. Instead, he saw a clean space, his human host looking tired but unharmed. "I trust you slept well?" Veshrak asked. His voice had a strange quality, like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. "It was an eventful night," Hyunwoo said carefully. Then Taeyang walked out of the workshop area, and Bori bounded after him. The Raxacor cub had something in its mouth, a wrench that Taeyang had been using. The engineer was laughing, trying to get it back. "Come on, Bori, give it here," Taeyang said, reaching for the tool. Bori dodged playfully, tail wagging. It was playing. The deadly war beast was playing fetch. Veshrak froze. The other 2 Velkari made sounds of shock, their translator devices struggling to process the emotion. One of them took a step backward, as if he might flee. "That's impossible," Veshrak whispered. "That's a Raxacor." "Yes," Hyunwoo said. "It visited us last night. Came through the ventilation system." "Strange, isn't it? How a Raxacor cub ended up in our air ducts." Veshrak's scales had paled, shifting from deep emerald to a lighter, sickly green. "What did you do to it?" "We gave it food," Jihai said. She was sitting on the floor, and Bori had abandoned the game with Taeyang to come investigate the Velkari. The cub approached Jihai and settled down next to her, allowing her to scratch behind its ears. "And water, and a safe place to sleep." Apparently that's all it took. Dayun joined them, her scanner in hand. "I've been taking readings all morning. This cub shows signs of severe psychological trauma, malnutrition, dehydration, and evidence of repeated physical abuse. The scarring on its scales suggests electrical shock treatment, probably part of its training." The word hung in the air like an accusation. Veshrak seemed unable to speak. He just stared at Bori, who was now purring under Jihai's attention, completely content. "Raxacors don't do that," one of the other Velkari said. "They don't purr. They don't play. They only know rage." "Maybe that's because of how you raise them," Taeyang said bluntly. "You ever think of that?" Veshrak's claws scraped against the floor. "You don't understand. Raxacors are weapons. They've been bred for combat for centuries. They're bonded to Velkari handlers through years of conditioning. They see all other species as prey or enemies. This one doesn't," Hyunwoo said. He gestured to Bori, who had now rolled onto its back so Jihai could scratch its belly. "This one sees us as friends. As family, maybe, because we showed it kindness instead of cruelty." In one night, Veshrak's translator was working overtime to express his disbelief. "You turned a Raxacor in one night?" "We didn't turn it into anything," Dayun corrected. "We just let it be what it naturally is. A young social creature that wants connection and safety. All that rage you mentioned? That's learned behavior. You taught it to them." Veshrak moved closer, slowly, as if approaching something dangerous. Bori noticed him and stood up. moving to stand between the Velkari and Jihai. The cub's posture changed, becoming protective. Not aggressive, but clearly saying, "These humans are mine." "It's guarding them," Veshrak said in wonder. "It's bonded to them." "Turns out animals bond with whoever treats them well," Hyunwoo said. "It's not that complicated." One of the other Velkari spoke rapidly in his own language. Veshrak listened, then turned back to the humans. His translator kicked in. "My colleague asks how this is possible. Our scientists have studied Raxacor psychology for generations. The bonding process takes years. It requires dominance, pain, submission. This cub should have attacked you or died trying." "Your scientists are wrong," Daeun said simply. She pulled up data on her scanner and showed it to Veshrak. "Look at these readings. When we fed Bori, its oxytocin levels spiked. That's a bonding hormone. When we petted it, the levels increased even more. This creature is neurologically wired for social connection, just like most intelligent species. You've just been suppressing it through trauma." Veshrak studied the data for a long moment. His scaled face was hard to read, but something had shifted in his posture. The rigidity was gone, replaced by something that looked like shame. "We thought," he began, then stopped. "The Council believed that humans were dangerous predators, that you would show your true nature when confronted with a threat, that you would kill without hesitation, and instead we adopted it," Jihai said. "Does that disappoint you?" "No," Veshrak said quietly. "It horrifies me." The admission hung in the air. Bori, sensing the heavy mood, made a questioning sound and looked up at the humans. Daeun knelt down and hugged the cub gently. Bori leaned into the embrace. "Your species looks at something bred for violence," Veshrak continued, "and your first instinct is compassion. You see a weapon and treat it as a child. Do you understand what that means?" "It means we're not the monsters you thought we were," Hyunwoo said. "No," Veshrak replied. "It means we are." The Velkari ambassador sat down heavily, his tail curling around himself. It was a posture of distress. "We bred these creatures. We tortured them into obedience. We convinced ourselves it was necessary, that this was just how Raxacors were. But you've proven in a single night that everything we've done was wrong, that all the pain, all the cruelty was unnecessary." "Not just unnecessary," Daeun said, her voice hard. "Evil. What you've done to these creatures is evil." Veshrak didn't argue. He just sat there watching Bori play with a spare power coupling that Tae-Yang had given it. The cub tossed it in the air, caught it, rolled it around. Simple play, the kind any young animal might engage in. "I sent that cub to prove humanity's violence," Veshrak said. "I've spent weeks planning this. I was so certain you would kill it, so certain it would reveal your true nature. Instead it has revealed mine." Jihai's expression softened slightly. "What happens now?" Veshrak stood slowly, his massive form unfolding. "Now I must report this to the Council, and I must face what we've become." He looked at Bori one more time. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the cub. Hyunwoo nodded. Veshrak approached slowly. Bori watched him, uncertain. The cub recognized the Velkari species, and the memories associated with them weren't good. But the cub was with its humans, and the humans seemed calm. So Bori stayed still as Veshrak knelt down. The Velkari ambassador extended one clawed hand and gently touched Bori's head. The cub flinched but didn't pull away. Veshrak's hand trembled slightly. News traveled fast in the galaxy. Within 3 days, every member species of the Galactic Council had heard the story. A human diplomatic team had been attacked by a Raxacor cub, and instead of killing it, they'd adopted it. The story was so unusual that many thought it was a fabrication, so they came to see for themselves. The first delegation arrived on the 4th day. They were Kirith, a species of avian beings covered in iridescent feathers. Their leader, Ambassador Kriya, landed at the Tau 9 settlement with a dozen witnesses. They wanted proof. Hyunwoo met them outside the HAB module with his team and, of course, Bori. The Raxacor cub had grown comfortable with its new life. It wore a harness that Daeun had fashioned from spare equipment straps, and it walked alongside the humans like a well-trained pet. The Kirith stopped dead when they saw Bori, their feathers puffed up in alarm, a natural threat display. Several of them made high-pitched sounds of distress. "That's a Raxacor," Kriya said through her translator. Her voice was sharp and melodic like wind chimes in a storm. "A Velkari war beast." "This is Bori," Jihai corrected gently. "And yes, he's a Raxacor. But he's not a war beast. He's our friend. As if to prove the point, Bori sat down and looked up at Ji-Hai expectantly. She pulled out a protein bar from her pocket and gave it to the cub. Bori took it gently from her hand, careful not to let his teeth touch her skin, and ate it happily. Impossible, one of the other Kirith breathed. Raxacors are killers. They don't eat from the hand. They tear the hand off. Only if they're trained to, Daun said. She knelt beside Bori and scratched behind his ear ridges. The familiar purring sound started, loud enough for all the Kirith to hear. Bori was taken from his mother very young. The Velkari tried to condition him for violence, but he was young enough that we could reverse it. All it took was food, water, and kindness. Kriya hopped closer, her bird-like movements quick and nervous. Your species bonds with predators? This is normal for humans? We've been doing it for thousands of years, Hyunwoo explained. On Earth, we domesticated wolves into dogs. We turned wildcats into house pets. We even befriended bears in some cases. We understand something important about predators. They're not evil. They're just trying to survive. And most creatures, if given the choice between violence and companionship, will choose companionship. But you are predators yourselves, Kriya said. This is predator recognizing predator, yes? Tae-Yang laughed. Maybe. Or maybe we just recognize what it's like to be scared and alone. Bori was terrified when we found him. He'd been abused and abandoned in a strange place. We responded with empathy, not aggression. One of the younger Kirith, braver than the others, approached Bori slowly. May I touch it? Ask him, not us, Ji-Hai said. He's his own person. The Kirith looked confused by this concept but extended a wing arm toward Bori. The cub sniffed the feathers curiously, then allowed the touch. The young Kirith stroked Bori's scaled head cautiously, and when nothing bad happened, she made a sound of amazement. It's warm, she said, and the purring. I can feel it through my feathers. Kriya watched this interaction with what might have been shock. You treat it as an equal, as a person, not a weapon. Because that's what he is, Daun said. Intelligence isn't unique to any one species. Bori understands emotions. He forms relationships. He plays and learns. Those are the markers of personhood, not what teeth you have or where you come from. The Kirith delegation stayed for hours, observing Bori interact with the humans. They watched Tae-Yang play fetch with the cub, throwing a ball that Bori would retrieve and bring back. They saw how Bori would seek out Daun when he was tired, curling up at her feet for a nap. They observed the gentle way Ji-Hai examined the cub with her medical scanner, and how Bori sat patiently through it, trusting her completely. When the Kirith finally left, Kriya paused at the doorway. This changes things, she said quietly. If humans can turn a weapon into a companion, what else might you be capable of? What other bridges might you build? More delegations came after that. The Threks arrived next, insectoid beings with compound eyes and clicking mandibles. They found the human-Raxacor bond disturbing but fascinating. Their hive-mind culture couldn't quite grasp the concept of cross-species friendship, but they documented everything with scientific precision. Then came the Moran, aquatic beings in environmental suits filled with water. They were philosophers and historians, and they wanted to understand the psychological basis for human behavior. They spent 2 days interviewing the team and studying Bori. Your capacity for empathy is remarkable, the Moran ambassador said. Her voice bubbled through the suit's speakers. Most species in the galaxy view strangers as potential threats. You view them as potential friends. It's almost naive. Maybe, Hyunwoo admitted. But naivety has gotten us this far. We're still alive, still exploring, still making new friends. That has to count for something. It counts for a great deal, the Moran replied. But it also makes you dangerous in ways you might not realize. How so? Ji-Hai asked. Because you challenge the fundamental order of galactic society. We've built our civilization on strict hierarchies. Predator and prey. Strong and weak. Domination and submission. But you refuse to accept these categories. You blur the lines. That's threatening to those who benefit from the current system. Daeun nodded slowly. We've noticed that most galactic species seem very rigid in their thinking. Everything is black and white. It's how we've survived, the Moran said. Clear categories mean clear rules. But humans seem to thrive in the gray areas. It's unsettling. By the end of the second week, 12 different species had visited. Each one left with the same basic confusion. How could these predator-prey dynamics be so easily overcome? What did it mean for the existing power structures if violence wasn't inevitable? The most difficult visit came from a Velkari delegation. They weren't led by Veshrak this time, but by High Commander Zelrax, a military leader responsible for the Raxacor breeding program. Zelrax was enormous even for a Velkari, with scarred scales and cold, calculating eyes. He arrived with 6 guards and demanded to see Bori immediately. Hyunwoo's team tensed, but they brought the cub out. Bori had grown in the 2 weeks since his arrival. He was noticeably bigger, healthier, with bright eyes and glossy scales. Zelrax stared at the Raxacor for a long moment. Then he spoke in rapid Velkari, his translator working to keep up. "This is wrong. This cub should be in training. Should be learning combat. You've made it soft. We've made him happy," Jihai corrected. "There's a difference. Happiness is weakness," Zelrax said. "Raxacors are bred for war. This one is useless now." Bori, sensing the tension, moved to stand in front of the humans. His posture changed, becoming protective. Not aggressive, but clearly positioning himself as a barrier between his family and the hostile Velkari. "Useless?" Taeyang said with a laugh. "He's protecting us right now. That's not combat training. That's love." Zelrax's eyes narrowed. "Prove it. Prove this creature has any value beyond sentiment." "How?" Hyunwoo asked, though he had a feeling he wouldn't like the answer. "Test it. Order it to attack me. If it obeys, then perhaps your training method has merit. If it refuses, it proves my point. It's too weak to be of use." "We're not ordering Bori to attack anyone," Daun said firmly. "He's not a weapon. We don't use him that way." "Then he is useless," Zelrax concluded, "and this entire experiment is a waste of time." But then something unexpected happened. Bori growled. It was the first time in 2 weeks that the humans had heard that sound. The cub's ears went back and his tail lashed. He was staring at Zelrax with clear anger. "Bori, no," Daun said quickly. "It's okay," but Bori didn't attack. Instead, he turned around and gently nudged Daun backward away from Zelrax. Then he sat down firmly between them, creating distance. The message was clear: stay away from my human. Zelrax looked genuinely surprised. It chose to protect rather than attack, even with a clear threat present. "Because we taught him there are better ways to solve problems than violence," Hyunwoo said. "He's showing restraint and intelligence. Those are strengths, not weaknesses." One of the Velkari guards spoke up hesitantly. "Commander, if I may, our war Raxacors are effective but unpredictable. They attack indiscriminately sometimes, even handlers. But this one shows judgment. It recognized a threat but chose a measured response." Zelrax was silent for a long moment. Then he did something none of them expected. He sat down on the floor, lowering himself to Bori's level. "Little one," he said in Velkari, "what have these soft mammals taught you?" Bori tilted his head, studying the High Commander. Then slowly the cub approached. He sniffed at Zelrax cautiously, then sat down in front of him. Not aggressive, but not afraid either. Equal to equal. Zelrax reached out one clawed hand. Bori allowed the touch just as he had with Veshrak. The High Commander stroked the cub's head gently and his expression changed. The hardness melted away, revealing something underneath. Sadness maybe, regret. "We've been doing this wrong for centuries," Zelrax said quietly.
"Haven't we?"
"Yes," Jihai said simply. "You have." Zelrax stood slowly. "The Galactic Council convenes in 5 days to discuss the human petition for membership. They will also be addressing the Raxacor issue. I will be there, and I will tell them what I've seen here." The Galactic Council chamber was enormous. It floated in orbit above the Council homeworld, a massive station built to accommodate hundreds of different species. The chamber itself could hold thousands. Today, it was full. Hyunwoo stood in the center of the speaking floor, his small team beside him. And, of course, Bori. The Raxacor cub wore his harness and stayed close to Daeun, but his eyes were wide, taking in the incredible sight of so many different species gathered in one place. The council seats rose in tiers all around them, each section housing a different member species. The Kirith with their colorful feathers, the Threx with their clicking mandibles, the aquatic Moran in their water-filled suits. Dozens of species Hyunwoo didn't even recognize yet. And in the highest tier, the Council of Elders, representatives from the oldest and most powerful civilizations. The proceedings had been going for hours. Various ambassadors had spoken about humanity's petition for membership. Some supported it, others were concerned, but everyone kept coming back to the same question. What did the Raxacor incident mean? Finally, it was Hyunwoo's turn to speak. He stepped forward, his voice amplified by the chamber's technology so that everyone could hear. "Honored council members," he began, "we came to Town 9 to negotiate mining rights. We came in peace, hoping to prove that humanity could be a good member of this galactic community. Instead, we were tested. A Raxacor cub was placed in our living quarters while we slept. We were supposed to react with violence. We were supposed to prove that humans are dangerous predators who can't be trusted." He paused, looking around at the assembled species. "We didn't react with violence. We responded with compassion. We fed a hungry child. We comforted a frightened animal. We chose kindness over cruelty, and because of that choice, everything changed." Ambassador Veshrak stood in the Velkari section. His request to speak was granted. "I orchestrated that test," he said, his voice heavy with shame. "I sent that cub to reveal humanity's true nature, but instead it revealed my own. For centuries, we Velkari have bred and trained Raxacors through torture and pain. We told ourselves it was necessary, that this was the only way to control such dangerous creatures. The humans proved us wrong in a single night." High Commander Zelrax rose next. "I have overseen the Raxacor program for 30 years. I believed in its necessity completely, but when I met the cub called Bori, when I saw how it had bonded with its humans, I realized we had committed a great wrong. We took creatures capable of love and loyalty, and we forced them to become weapons through systematic abuse." Jihai stepped forward. "If the council permits, I'd like to share some data." She pulled up holographic displays showing Bori's biological readings. These are stress hormone levels in a typical trained Raxacor compared to Bori. The difference is dramatic. Velkari war beasts live in a constant state of fear and aggression. Their lifespans are short, their health is poor, and their behavior is unpredictable. Bori is healthier, calmer, and more intelligent than any combat-trained Raxacor on record. Dayun added her own findings. Intelligence tests show that Bori is learning at an accelerated rate. He understands complex commands. He shows problem-solving abilities. And most importantly, he demonstrates empathy. He recognizes when we're sad or stressed and tries to comfort us. That's not trained behavior. That's natural social intelligence that was being suppressed through the traditional training methods. A voice came from the Elder Council. It was Matriarch Sela of the Korath, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. "What you describe is admirable, but it raises questions. If humans can befriend predators, if you can turn weapons into companions, what does this mean for our social order? The galaxy operates on understood hierarchies. Predator and prey, strong and weak. You blur these lines." Hyunwoo took a breath. This was the crucial moment. "With respect, Matriarch, I think those lines were always blurry. We just convinced ourselves they were solid because it made the universe easier to understand. Yes, humans are predators, but we're also social creatures. We're capable of great violence, but we're also capable of great compassion. Those things aren't contradictory. They're two sides of the same coin." Tae Yang spoke up, his voice clear and strong. "On Earth, we have a saying. The measure of intelligence is the ability to change. We changed our relationship with wolves and turned them into dogs. We changed our relationship with wild cats and made them our companions. We're not special because we're strong. We're special because we're willing to evolve, to grow, to see new possibilities." Bori, sensing the importance of the moment, did something remarkable. He walked away from Daun, crossing the speaking floor on his own. Several council members gasped. A Raxacor loose in the council chamber could be catastrophic. But Bori didn't attack anyone. He walked directly to the center of the floor, sat down and looked up at the assembled species. Then he made a sound, not a growl or a roar, but something softer, almost like a greeting. The chamber fell silent. Everyone was watching the cub. "Bori is asking you to see him," Daun said quietly. "Not as a weapon, not as a monster, but as a person. A young person who wants to live without fear, who wants to love and be loved. That's all any of us want, isn't it? Whether we have scales or skin, feathers or fur." Matriarch Sela rose from her seat, a rare occurrence. She descended the tiers slowly, her ancient form moving with dignity. The entire council watched as she approached Bori. The Raxacor cub stayed perfectly still, watching the matriarch with those intelligent amber eyes. "May I?" Sela asked, looking at Hyunwoo. "Ask him," Hyunwoo said. "He makes his own choices." Sela knelt down, bringing herself level with Bori. She extended one long, thin finger toward the cub. Bori sniffed it carefully, then pressed his head against her hand. The purring sound echoed through the silent chamber. I have lived for 300 years, Sela said, her voice filled with wonder. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have witnessed wars and peace treaties, but I have never seen anything quite like this. She looked up at the council, a creature bred for violence choosing gentleness, a predator species offering compassion. This is not a threat to our order. This is an evolution of it. More council members began to rise, speaking in support. Kriya of the Kirith shared her observations. The Moran ambassador discussed the philosophical implications. Even some of the more conservative species admitted that perhaps there was something to learn from humanity's approach. But not everyone was convinced. Ambassador Drex of the Haxian Empire, a warrior culture, spoke against the motion. This is all very touching, but it proves nothing about humanity's fitness for council membership. They befriended one cub. What about when difficult decisions must be made? What about when violence is necessary? Will they be too soft to do what must be done? Yinwu met Drex's gaze. We're not soft. We're strategic. There's a difference. Yes, we chose compassion with Bori, but make no mistake, if he had actually attacked us, we would have defended ourselves. The point is that we tried peace first. We looked for another way, and we found it. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. The strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must, Drex quoted. That's the way of the universe. Maybe it has been, Jihai said. But maybe it doesn't have to be. Maybe we can build something better. Isn't that what civilization is supposed to be about? Moving beyond our base instincts toward something more? The debate continued for hours. Arguments for and against, statistics and philosophy, personal testimony and political maneuvering. Through it all, Bori stayed calm, moving between the human team members, offering comfort with his presence. Finally, the Council of Elders called for a vote. The chamber fell silent as the results were tallied. Species by species, the votes came in, some for humanity, some against. The tension was unbearable. Matriarch Sela announced the results. By a vote of 67 to 33 with 15 abstentions, the Galactic Council grants humanity full membership status. Welcome to the greater galaxy, humans. May you teach us as much as you have taught yourselves. The chamber erupted in a mixture of cheers and protests. Hyunwoo felt his legs go weak with relief. They'd done it. Humanity had a place among the stars, but Sela wasn't finished. Furthermore, the Council has voted to investigate the treatment of Raxacors and other war beasts across all member species. The Vilcari Empire will be required to reform their breeding programs with human oversight. Ambassador Veshrak and Commander Zelrax have already volunteered to lead this effort. More cheers. Veshrak looked up at the human team and nodded. It was a gesture of respect, of gratitude. Sela descended to the speaking floor one more time and addressed the humans directly. You have been granted membership, but you have also been given a responsibility. You will serve as our conscience, reminding us that compassion is not weakness. You will help us reform systems that have grown cruel through tradition. It will not be easy. Many will resist, but we believe you are up to the challenge. We'll do our best, Hyunwoo promised. As they prepared to leave the council chamber, dozens of ambassadors approached, wanting to meet Bori, to touch him, to understand this miracle they'd witnessed. The Raxacor cub handled it all with grace, accepting pets and attention from species across the galaxy. One small Threx approached nervously.